15 years ago, I ended my marriage when I found out my husband was having an affair with a childhood friend, who even had his child. This betrayal hurt me deeply and almost made me quit my job. During this tough time, I met my current husband, and we created a happy home together. But my peace was broken when I recently ran into my ex-husband for the first time in 15 years. He said to me, "You must still be single, right? Who would marry a woman who can't have kids?" He had a smug look on his face. I replied, "You still can't say anything nice, can you?" His words stung. As he bragged about his child, I said, "Oh, really? What a cute child. Let me introduce you to my kids too." When I introduced my son, he looked shocked and scared. I'm Florence, 38 years old, living with my 13-year-old son, Max, my 11-year-old daughter, Ava, and my husband, David, who is also 38. Max is in his first year of middle school and can be a handful. Lately, he's been a bit cheeky, but when he goes too far, David steps in to handle him. Ava loves makeup and fashion and often gets her way since she's the youngest and only girl. Max adores her and quickly apologizes when she playfully threatens him by saying, "If you're not nice to Mom, I might not like you anymore." Big brother. He's straightforward and always brightens up the room. My life is busy but joyful. However, many people don't know I'm divorced and remarried. I divorced my ex-husband, whom I'll call Jack, because of his terrible betrayal 15 years ago. We had many mutual friends and everyone supported our marriage, so things seemed perfect at first. Early in our marriage, we often talked about having kids, saying things like, "I want a child soon, and it would be nice to have matching outfits for our kids." We both looked forward to becoming parents. But after a year passed without a baby, things got tense. Each month when my period arrived, it caused stress in our marriage. We didn't want it to be a problem, so we tried expensive treatments to find out why we couldn't have children. But the doctors said nothing was wrong. At first, Jack was supportive, but as time passed without kids, he became frustrated and his attitude changed. He would loudly say things like, "When will I become a father?" His comments made it seem like I was the problem. He stopped helping with housework, leaving everything to me. When I asked him why he stopped helping, he said, "Because you're infertile. If you don't do the housework, you're not being a good wife." After that, his comments became crueler. He would say things like, "My sister is having her second child, and we don't even have one yet." He would glare at me, blaming me for not being able to have kids. He even said, "If you were normal, I would have been a father by now." I protested, "We don't even know the cause yet," but he replied, "It's always the woman's fault. If I had known you couldn't have kids, I wouldn't have married you. You should feel guilty." His words hurt deeply. I also got calls from my in-laws asking when they could expect a grandchild. At first, I brushed it off, saying it was only the first year, but my mother-in-law's attitude turned harsh. She would say things like, "You're useless for not being able to have children. Your sister-in-law did it so quickly." The pressure became overwhelming. One day, my best friend Daisy invited me out for drinks. Jack was often busy with work and rarely home. Daisy shared some surprising news with me. "I've been wanting to see you for so long. I have something important to tell you, Florence." "I've missed you too. What's on your mind?" I asked. "Do you remember Grace?" Leo was Jack's childhood friend. They grew up together and their families were close. Grace works at the same company as me now. Grace, the CEO's daughter? I didn't know her well in college because we were in different clubs. Jack once introduced me to her, saying, "She's my girlfriend, so please get along." But Grace looked at me like she didn't like me, so I tried to avoid her. Grace participated in beauty pageants and, being the CEO's daughter, was somewhat of a celebrity at our office. Grace, oh, Jack's childhood friend, right? I know her. She's beautiful. We work at the same company but don't interact much. What about her? I asked. Well, it's hard to say, but I think your husband and Grace are having an affair, Daisy said. I was shocked by Daisy's warning. I saw them walking hand in hand, not just as friends. No way. I think you should check it out. If you need to talk, just call me. Thank you for telling me. I had suspected Jack was cheating. He had been awful to me, always coming home late and claiming it was because of work. He was never home on weekends, saying he was busy with client entertainment. I had an idea but tried to ignore it. After leaving Daisy, I went straight to a detective agency to gather evidence of Jack's infidelity. Within a week, they had all the proof, but I wasn't ready to divorce him yet. No matter how terrible he was still the man I once loved. A few days later, I came home to find Jack, who usually came home late, sitting at the dinner table. "Oh, you're home. I thought you'd be late again today," I said sarcastically. "Yeah, sorry about that. I need to talk to you." After hearing about the affair from Daisy, I braced myself for bad news. "I want a divorce." "What? So that's how it's going to be?" I realized he was serious about Grace. "Grace is pregnant. I'm going to marry her." "Grace, your childhood friend? You said she was just a friend, and now she's pregnant?" "You were having an affair." "Don't call it an affair," he said dismissively. "That just makes me look bad. Grace can have kids, and she's beautiful. Why would I choose you?" Jack's shameless attitude shocked me. He didn't think he had done anything wrong. I was speechless. Seeing my silence, he smirked and added, "My mom wants me to divorce you. She says Grace is prettier, nicer, and can have kids. She's always liked her better." Tears filled my eyes. I knew they preferred Grace. "Well, I've packed my things. I need to get back to Grace and her baby," he said. With that, Jack left the house. I didn't have the strength to stop him. Later, I received a one-sided divorce paper with a note in a woman's handwriting: "Please divorce my husband soon." I felt angry and confused. Why was I being blamed? I couldn't just accept this divorce silently. Determined, I took the evidence from the detective agency and filed for divorce mediation. A few days later, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Grace, Jack's mistress. "What do you think you're doing? Why did you start a lawsuit?" she screamed. "It's only natural, isn't it? I know all about your affair. It's right for me to demand compensation." "Compensation? I'm pregnant. How can you be so cruel at this time?" "Who's being cruel?" "You're the one with a married man. You're the infertile one, you horrible woman," she shouted. Anyway, I plan to discuss the divorce and compensation in an official meeting. "Let's talk then," I said and hung up. During the mediation, the evidence showed Jack and Grace's relationship was infidelity. Jack tried to blame my infertility, but the court dismissed it, saying there wasn't conclusive evidence in just a year of marriage. I received $220,000 in alimony from Jack and $110,000 from Grace. I didn't want any financial ties with them, so our divorce was finalized. However, my troubles didn't end there. Since Jack, Grace, and I all went to the same university, rumors spread among friends that I hid my infertility to marry Jack. Some even sympathized with Jack and Grace. That was terrible. Grace and I worked at the same company, and rumors spread there too. Everyone sided with Grace, the CEO's daughter, who made herself look like a victim, saying I was a horrible person for demanding alimony while she was pregnant. I tried to ignore it, but since Grace was the president's daughter, my bosses scolded me, saying, "Don't treat Grace badly." No matter how hard I worked, I was left out of major projects and eventually felt forced to resign. While looking for a new job, I was headhunted by another company. "We need someone as diligent and capable as you," they said. In this new place, I thrived beyond my expectations in my new job. My boss, David, genuinely saw me as an individual, unlike at my previous company, where favoritism towards the CEO's daughter was rampant. I was drawn to David, who supported me during my lowest moments after my painful breakup with Jack. After several dinners together, we began discussing personal matters, which led to a romantic relationship. David eventually proposed, but I confessed my fear of infertility. He looked at me sincerely and said, "I'd love to have children, but the most important thing is that I love you. Florence, you mean everything to me. Even if we can't have kids, I'll always be by your side." His words filled me with happiness, and I realized I wanted to spend my life with him. Shortly after marrying David, we welcomed our first child, a son named Max, followed by our daughter Ava. I began to think that my inability to conceive with Jack might have just been a matter of timing or compatibility. Parenting is challenging, but we're living happily every day. One day, I attended a friend's wedding. During the event, while mingling, I stood up to go to the restroom and spotted my ex-husband, Jack, for the first time in 15 years. Yikes! Why is he here? My mind went blank for a moment, but then I remembered the bride and groom were our university friends. I tried to ignore him, but he called out, "Hey, what are you doing here? Haven't seen you in a while. You've gained weight." Jack, possibly drunk, was loud and obnoxious. "You haven't changed a bit," still as sarcastic as ever, I thought. He then called over his family, including Grace and her son. Grace saw me and laughed. "Oh, long time no see. Have you put on weight? Stress eating, maybe? Ha ha ha. We've been through a lot. Ha ha ha. You're still infertile, right? No one would want you now." I was appalled by their rudeness and struggled to find words. Suddenly, I noticed their son looking down, clearly embarrassed. He had handsome features. I forgot to introduce him. "This is my son. He's cute like Grace, right?" Grace boasted. "He's handsome, smart, a real genius." "Sorry. It seems like we're the only happy ones here." The couple laughed, proud of their son. However, their son's expression showed he was dissatisfied with their attitude. He must be a kind child. I had no time for them. Just as I was about to leave, Jack grabbed my arm tightly. "You divorced me because of infertility, and yet you had the gall to take money from us." Jack seemed to hold a grudge from 15 years ago. If anyone should hold a grudge, it's me, I thought. Grace chimed in. "Yeah, you're infertile and single. Why do you need money? Families like us with children need it more. Give us back double the money you took." I was stunned by their selfishness. Just then, Jack's son spoke up. "Single means unmarried, right? But she's wearing a wedding ring." Jack and Grace stared at my left hand. "You're married," they yelled, drawing the attention of those around us. I felt embarrassed. Just as I was wondering how to respond, a familiar face appeared. "Auntie and Uncle, you shouldn't be so loud at a celebration. It's bothering others. Maybe you should be more considerate," my son Max and my daughter Ava said, worried about me. "Mom, are you late? Do you have kids?" Ava asked. "Yes, let me introduce them. This is my son Max and my daughter Ava." Jack looked shocked to see children from the woman he thought was infertile. Grace stared at my son. After a moment, they spoke in a tone that was strained and horrified. "That uniform." They seemed curious about Max's attire. "Yes, He came straight from school with my husband, so he's still in his uniform. Not that. It's from that famous private middle school. Yes. Max worked hard and wanted to try for it, so we let him take the exam. He passed and has been attending that school since this year. Max excelled academically and was at a renowned school. No way. That can't be your son, Grace exclaimed. My daughter too. Next year she plans to take the same school's exam. Yeah, and Max is amazing. He won a violin contest. Violin? I thought I recognized this boy. He was on TV. Recently, I noticed my son, Max, was getting quite a bit of media attention. He had just come back from violin practice when I unexpectedly ran into my ex-husband, Jack, and Grace. You were supposed to be infertile. How could you have children like this? Jack exclaimed, clearly shocked. Well, it seems we're all happy now. Let's not involve each other anymore, I said, trying to leave with my kids. Just then, my husband, David, arrived. Hey, what's going on? The main event is about to restart. Jack's face went pale when he saw David. Mr. Lopez. Grace also turned pale, recognizing my husband as the new president of the parent company of her father's firm. Ah, Mr. Lopez, Jack stammered. What's with this atmosphere? What happened? David looked puzzled at the sudden tension. Max piped up. I heard them calling Mom infertile and fat. So Ava and I came to help her. You heard that? David's expression hardened as he realized the situation. I heard rumors, but I didn't expect such a lack of decency, he said. Jack quickly started making excuses. No, I mean Mr. Lopez. There's no way I would speak about your wife, right, Grace? I suffered because of her. As Jack flattered David, Grace protested, leading to an argument between them. Their son, who had been quiet, finally shouted, Let's stop this. It's terrible how Mom and Dad are talking about this lady. Am I a child born from an affair? Am I unwanted? Jack and Grace grew unsettled at their son's outburst. Oh well, it's not like that, Jack muttered. The other guests began to stare, and Grace blushed, realizing her behavior. I admired their son for his strong sense of justice. Before I could speak, David said, Thank you for defending my wife. You really are a kind child. I added with a smile, but maybe I am a bit chubby. That's not true at all, he replied. Well, actually, I'm pregnant, I said, stroking my belly, revealing I was on maternity leave. I reassured the boy. Your mom nurtured you in her belly with care. You're not unwanted. Your mom and dad love you, right? I looked at Jack and Grace. The boy asked them, Really? They nodded vigorously, saying, Yes, you're our pride. His face lit up with a smile, and I felt relieved. Let's get back to our seats. It's a day of celebration. We returned to our seats, and the chaotic scene came to an end as the wedding concluded successfully. On our way to the station, Jack and Grace approached us, holding their son's hand. Max and Ava were protective of me, but David calmed them down. Sorry about that. We regret everything, including today. Thank you for earlier, they said. It was the first apology I had received from them in 15 years. I chuckled. Really? After all this time? With that, I turned my back and walked away. Max offered to carry my bags, and Ava cheerfully draped a coat over my shoulders. Despite their young age, my kids looked out for me during my pregnancy. All right, tonight's dinner will be Dad's homemade hamburgers, Max and Ava's favorite. Yay! Thank you! I vowed to protect the smiles of my beloved family and move past the pains of the past.